Well, I see we've got a good group here, and probably others will join us. So welcome. And I want to make this as interactive as possible. So Molly is going to be helping, and she's going to be monitoring the chat room. So feel free to post some questions, and I'll try to weave them into the presentation. And I'll also be available after the presentation for some questions. So, okay, today, as Molly said, I'm going to be speaking to you about really the 3 essential strategies that anyone over 50 needs to take seriously to get an edge in the job market. So let me just say that at Hard at Work, I'm the founder of Hard at Work, and what we do, we're a career counseling and outplacement firm, and we help people make transitions, and that might be to help you figure out what is next on your career path. It might help you figure out the strategies to get there, or both. So that's what we do, and that's what I'm going to speak to today, strategies. So a number of things have happened over the past 25 years around looking for work. For one thing, we're living longer. People in our generation, sometimes called boomers, are living, in some cases, 30 years longer than the former generation. So as you might imagine, that's having a huge impact on work and on life, really. Because what we're finding is that people who retire at any age, 60, 50, 70, 4 out of 5 people return to work within 18 months. Why do you suppose they do that? They're bored, or the number one reason is they lack a sense of purpose that work provided them. That is the number one reason. Now, I'm sure that the paycheck would help for some. So purpose and a paycheck is one way that one of my mentors talks about this. His name is Richard Leiter, and he's in Minnesota. And Richard says, yes, purpose and a paycheck, those are the 2 key reasons why people go back to work. I've also heard, I would say there's secondary reasons. The socialization is really important for some. And so is adding structure. Some people do very well without structure, and others, they miss it a great deal, and they want some of it that work provides. So I imagine that those of you who are joining this conversation are in one of 3 categories. You are either actively seeking employment, you may have been recently laid off, and you're starting that process. You may be employed, but you want something different. Or maybe a 4th, you're just curious about what I'm going to say. So in any case, welcome. And I'm going to cover the basis of those 3 situations. I do want to say for a minute, just something about layoffs. There continue to be a large number of layoffs, and that is not necessarily a reduction in force like there used to be many years ago where companies laid off a huge number of people. Now it's more 1, 2, 3, 5, and that's what I'm seeing. And we do a very large amount of outplacement services, which is to help people who have been laid off, help them transition. And our fee is paid for by the company. So I receive calls from people who have been laid off, and usually there's a separation agreement you are asked to sign. And if you're over 40, you have 21 days to sign that agreement, just FYI. I'm sure the HR person would tell you that. But if you are laid off and your severance agreement does not include outplacement, it's within your right to ask for it before you sign. In many cases, I've found that people do get some kind of outplacement, maybe a month, it may be a number of weeks or a dollar amount. So in any case, ask that question if it is not part of your severance agreement. So that's what I want to say about OP is what it's called, outplacement transition services. So I want to talk about what is really key as you begin the process of looking for work. I imagine many of you haven't done this for a long time. I would say, so I specialize in working with people over 50. My company will see any adult. David, who did the seminar at 10:30, he loves to work with the young folk, as he calls them. I'm not sure exactly what that age is, but it's certainly over 23 and under 45. But we will see anyone, and I certainly do work with people younger than 50, but that's my specialty. And one of the reasons it's my specialty is because, well, I'm in that boomer group, but also I find that people in what Carl Jung says is the second half of life, they tend to look more deeply at their lives. They're more introspective. And I like that. I like having those conversations, especially when they involve my area of expertise, which is work and your purpose in the world. So working with 50-year-olds is different than working with a 23-year-old or 27-year-old who's really in the developing skills phase. Often people in their 50s or 60s have developed a large number of skills, and they're trying to figure out either who will hire them with those skills, or maybe they know who will hire them, but they want to try another career. So those questions are really important. And in order to answer them, I think you need to do three things. The first is you need to be able to clearly communicate your skills and competencies. Those things that you do well and that you've done many times. We say that that is about presenting a professional brand. Your brand is how you put yourself out there in the world of work. And, it's a fairly new phenomenon that we're even talking about professional brand. It used to be not that long ago. First of all, LinkedIn, which I'll get into later, didn't even exist. But people would look through the classified ads and, oh, there's something that I think I could do. I'm going to apply. Probably sent in a resume, filled out an application, and maybe got an interview in the job. It was really as simple as that. Nowadays, not much going on in the newspaper, but certainly the newspaper's gone online, as Portland Press Herald has. And you might see some positions posted that you're interested in. But regardless of what you're seeing out there, you need to start first with you and figure out, think about, write about, ask people who know you what your skills are. Because people in general tend to be kind of modest. We don't want to brag. We don't want to talk about ourselves. Well, sorry to tell you, but you have to shift that mindset when you're in the job search mode. You want to be honest. It's not about making up and, pumping yourself up. It's about telling the truth, being accurate, but you need to know what you do well. And David addressed that. And in fact, he shared a link to a video on our website. So if you go to heartatwork.com, there's a video page. You'll see David talking about skills and the stories that you need to be able to tell and communicate to a prospective employer. Really, really important. How you communicate those skills happens in a variety of ways. First, it's going to happen as you talk to friends, talk to family members, Let them know, have you come in contact with anyone? Do you know anyone who might be interested in using my skills in XYZ? That's different from saying, hey, Sally, have you heard of any jobs lately? It's fairly rare, I would say, that people are going to just say, oh yeah, there's a job next door, but they can put you in touch with people. And I will get into that strategy and how you make the most of those conversations in a few minutes. So I see that there are, I wondered if there are some chats going on. So Molly, I'm sure you're taking care of that. And
I am. That's just me and Strawberry putting basic info in the chat.
Okay, great. Perfect. That's great. So again, feel free. I know that some of you have just joined. Feel free if during the conversation you have a question to ask me, and Molly will add that to the chat room and let me know about it. And I'm happy to do that. You know, it's hard to have a dialogue going with 35 people, but I like interactive sessions. And so I invite you to do that. So you communicate through these conversations. And an important way, of course, you communicate your brand, what you bring to the table in the job search mode, is through your resume. Probably all of you participating have written a resume at some point in your life. Maybe not recently, but at some point. And I often say to clients, because they'll say, well, here's an example. I had someone meet with me recently, and he was, in his words, all set with a resume. He needed help with LinkedIn. He needed help with strategy. And I said, okay, then why don't you send it to me? And he said, oh, and I had it professionally done. You know, a resume service. They did it for me. And so that tipped me off. I became quite suspicious because many, not all, many resume services, if they're not trained as career counselors, they're not necessarily going to understand all the ins and outs of writing a resume these days. So sure enough, the person sent me the resume and it was not usable. I found a nice way to say that to him. And I say, well, we'll fix it. But right now it's not usable. And he said, well, what do you mean it's not usable? So I wonder how many of you have heard of applicant tracking systems. So they're very prevalent in the marketplace these days. Essentially, it's a software system that a company or an organization purchases, and it serves as the initial screen of applicants. So no person doing it initially for these companies, but a computer. And so the company sets the algorithm of the computer according to what they want. I mean, we don't really know that, but we do know some things. And that is typically those, we call them ATS, applicant tracking systems, do not read graphics. They don't read shading. They don't read headers and footers. They don't often read underlining. So some of these fancy resumes that people pay for, usually they're templates online, frankly, they don't pass through applicant tracking systems. 2%, David stated this as well, it's estimated that 2% of resumes actually get through to a person. They're just thrown out, rejected by the applicant tracking system. So if you are limiting your job search to only applying online, you're greatly limiting what you're going to find and who will respond to you. So you want to eliminate those fancy aspects of resumes and stick to vanilla. Vanilla works, plain, but very well written. That's what's really key. So resumes are important. Important that you keep in mind applicant tracking systems, because frankly, you don't really know if a company is using an ATS or not. So assume they are, because many are, and be careful about how you write your resume. One font only, make the font at least 11 points or larger, no smaller. I would say maybe 3 out of 5 resumes that I see have headers and footers. I guess it looks nice. You have your name and contact information as a header, but you can imagine it goes through the computer and the computer doesn't read headers. It just says, oh, this applicant doesn't have a name. Boop. So you want to avoid those headers and footers. I would say even in terms of page numbers. So speaking of page numbers, someone asked me today and said, oh, I don't think I can get my resume down to 1 page. And I said, well, you don't need to get your resume down to 1 page. Or they might say, well, my resume is 5 pages. Is that okay? Absolutely not. A resume has 10 seconds to make an impression, enough that the person wants to read more. So if you have 5 pages, can you imagine? You're reading 5 pages and you have 100 resumes to look at? No, forget it. So no more than 2 pages. If it ends up being 1, that's fine. If you've said what you need to say. It's rare for people who are 50 and have a lot of experience to keep it to 1 page, but 2 pages limit. Unless the exception, so before I opened my practice many years ago, I worked in higher ed. I was at Bowdoin and UNH, and people who applied to those schools, to higher ed, especially faculty, of course, they have what's called a CV, a curriculum vitae. That's not for most of us. The majority of people are writing resumes. And curriculum vitae have everything from presentations they've done and books they've written and papers they've published. They need to have that to get the job in the psych department. But that's not for us. We write resumes. So resumes are really important. Some people are saying, oh, maybe LinkedIn is replacing resumes. No, it's really not replacing resumes, and certainly not in Maine. Maybe with the millennials or whatever the group is after the millennials, maybe in San Francisco, that's what they're doing. But most places, no, they're more traditional resumes. I also want to talk just for a minute about cover letters. People often fret about cover letters. They have a hard time writing them. They don't know what to say, or they say too much. They tell the story. We all have a big story. Everyone has a big story. I'm telling you that the employer does not want to hear a big story or see a big story. So cover letters, 1 page. And we have a very easy to follow strategy on cover letters. So it goes like this. You see a job description, and in most cases, job descriptions have a set of qualifications and job requirements. Hopefully it's not long. And typically they're not. So you have this information, and I say to people, make sure you have 80% of what's required. You do not need to have 100%, unless it says this is absolutely required. Well, if you don't have that, I wouldn't apply, but that's not very common. So you look at the requirements of the job, and you circle, now I'm saying print it out, you circle those that you can absolutely back up. Yes, I've done that. Yes, I've demonstrated that skill. And you begin to create a cover letter saying that you're applying for X job and you saw it, wherever you saw it. And you've just moved to Maine, or you're committed to working in Maine, or nowadays, not everybody, a lot of people are working remotely. So it doesn't really matter if you're in Maine or not. So you apply for this job, you tell them in the cover letter that you're applying for the position and you're very excited. And you tell them maybe why you're excited about this position. And then you say, I'm confident that I can do the job and I have the following required qualifications. Skip a space, indent, start your bullets, and you take right off the page verbatim let's say the first qualification is ability to supervise a team. Okay, I would say take the exact wording, ability to supervise a team, put it in bold, colon, and then say, for the past 5 years, I've worked managing, evaluating, and hiring, probably hiring would be first, a team of 7 people. So you're stating not just the requirement, of course, you're backing it up. You don't have to say where, when, because you're going into that detail in your resume. But you want to show them, as you know, with some specificity, that you have that skill. And you pick the ones that seem most important on the job description, and you plunk them in. Now, it may say requirement would be an associate's degree in computer science. Well, that I wouldn't pick that as the qualification because they can obviously see that in your resume. So you want to pick others right off the page in that job description. So, and then you end it. I hope that I have the opportunity to meet in person via Zoom. I hope that I have the opportunity to meet with you and further describe my qualifications and skills. Sincerely. And that's that. One more thing I'm kind of picturing in my mind, the cover letter and the resume. And on your resume, you don't need to put your address. An employer is not going to mail you a letter. They're going to email you or call you or text you. So you can just say, you could say Scarborough, Maine, or you could just put your email, your phone, and your LinkedIn URL. I will get to that. The other reason.
Barbara, can I jump in with a question real quick?
Yeah, it's good. That's a good place to stop for a minute.
All right. Rebecca is asking, should people have a plain resume for an ATS and then a more formal looking resume to bring to an interview, or is that creating extra work for yourself?
That's a really good question. Thank you for asking, Rebecca. So when I talk about a kind of a plain vanilla resume, it looks very professional and it has very good information. It just doesn't have, I'm sure you've all seen resumes that have shading. You know, they have the category of work experience or work history and education, and there's a big gray shade over it. It's supposed to highlight it. Well, I've just explained why that's not a good idea these days because of applicant tracking systems. So I don't think there is a need to have 2 different resumes, unless you're a graphic designer. And you can imagine why it's important to have a fancy resume if you're into graphics. You know, what I see a lot of people who are in the artistic world, the creative world, they may even have a website, or on LinkedIn, they've really jazzed it up now so that you can post photographs if you're a photographer. You can post articles you've written. You can post works of art. There are a lot of things that you can do with LinkedIn to augment your resume. So you may or may not need to even have 2 if you're in the creative sphere. But most of us absolutely do not need 2 resumes. Okay, so cover letters, resumes, that's done. You've done a good job. Oh, I know what I was saying. Resume at the top. So if you are applying for a position that's in Seattle and you're hoping that you can work remotely, because of course so many people are doing that these days, but you know, I do not want to leave Maine. Well, you may not know that the position has to be based in Seattle, and the person has to move if they're out of state. Companies would like to save on relocation expenses. So if you don't put Scarborough, Maine, they won't know where you are necessarily. So I think it's good reason just to put, of course, your name, email, phone, and LinkedIn URL. I don't have a problem putting Portland, Maine, or wherever you are in Maine. That's, and most people do, and I think that's fine. So you have that on the page. We recommend left-hand justified because the I goes from the left to the right. And you cut and paste that and put it on your cover letter so that it's a heading. It's like your own stationery. I think that's a good idea. It looks really good. I often say to clients, if you show 10 people a resume, you are going to get 10 different weigh-ins on it. Everyone wants to give their opinion. They could be in HR, they could be a truck driver. Your uncle, you love him, he's smart, and he looks at it and he says, well, I think this. We know what we're doing. This is all we do, help people navigate through the job market. So I hope you take my advice on resumes. Okay, you've got your resume together, you've got a great cover letter. You need to be prepared in another way. And that is through LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn is, it's a real force in the scene right now. Microsoft bought LinkedIn 4 years ago for guess how much? $26 billion. So they're not just sitting on their laurels saying it's good enough as it is. Oh no. In fact, oh my gosh, I swear every week they make changes. So I meet with clients over Zoom. We share the screen, which is what we're going to do in a minute. And I think, oh, I'm going to tell them to put this item over here, and that place is gone. So I know it well enough, even with the changes, so that I can think on my feet quickly. But LinkedIn is changing it all the time, and they want this to be the premier professional branding site. And at the moment, it certainly is. And they have a head start over anyone else. So I want to share my screen with you. I'm going to bring up my LinkedIn profile and walk you through a few really important pieces. So bear with me. I'm just going to move that up on the screen. Okay, so Molly, I'm trying to get, oh, there it is. Share the screen, LinkedIn, share. Here I am.
It is
Okay.
working. We can
Yeah,
see it.
it worked. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so this is my homepage. So those of you who do not have a LinkedIn profile, my advice, if you're going to be looking for work, exception being if you're a teacher. Educators, unless you're an administrator in a school, really don't tend to be on LinkedIn, and I think they don't need to be. But everyone else, for the most part, needs to be. So it's very easy. You just sign up. You go into linkedin.com. It will tell you how to register. It will also ask you if you want to download all of your contacts. The answer is no. That message will eventually go away, but you don't want to do that because they'll send a message to all of your people on your email. It's not good. Okay. Once you have a profile, you have to start loading it with information. So here's the home page, and you can tell that because it's got the little house. You'll want to, when you're starting to either edit your page or include information on your page, you're going to go into profile edit mode, and you click on your little headshot. Until you upload a headshot, it's going to be a little icon of a person. So I click on that, and here's my edit page. How do I know that? Pencils everywhere. That tells you you're in edit mode. So the first thing you want to do, you're going into me, and again, it has a little icon unless your picture's there. You go into me, settings and privacy, visibility, and you are going to move down until you see the word share right here. So once you have a number of contacts, when you make changes to your LinkedIn profile, which I'm going to advise you to do to update it, they'll all get notifications. Oh, Sally change this. So Susie and Jim got recommendations. It's kind of spamming your contacts. So I recommend that you change this if it's on yes, and I think that is the default piece there. You want to change it to no, and it will save it. You never have to look at it again. So I always say, do that. Do that first. All right, so I'm going back. I'm in edit mode, see the pencil. Number 2 thing you want to do, see where it says edit public profile? When you click on that, it's going to show you your LinkedIn name, so to speak. LinkedIn gives everyone their name and letters and numbers after it. So initially I had Barbara Babkirk 2468 ABC or something like that. You don't need those numbers. In fact, it can hinder the chances of people finding you on LinkedIn. So what I recommend is, okay, go in and just highlight those numbers after the name and delete them and then save it. If you have an uncommon name like mine, a little message will pop up over here saying, congratulations, success, you have your new URL. Or it will be a red item here and it will say, sorry, it's taken, or something like that. So then I put in a middle initial, just change it up a little bit. Don't put in anything strange like your dog's name or, just put in your name, perhaps with the middle initial. Okay, and then you're going to save it. And then you have your LinkedIn URL, which you're going to put on your resume. Always. Because your resume, your LinkedIn URL and your LinkedIn profile is going to look so fabulous that you'll want everyone to see it, which is the point, right? Professional branding. You really want to make your LinkedIn profile yours. And by that, you're starting to do that by having your custom URL. The other way you do it, of course, is having your headshot. It does not have to be professionally done. This was done on a vacation, my picture, with a bunch of people with me. Of course, I cropped them out. Make sure you crop, if you use that kind of photo, which is perfectly fine, crop out, someone may have had their arm around you and then you see the hand here. Honest to God, I've seen so many of those. Crop out any people or extraneous limbs. So you have your photo. Then you also want to have, I'm going to go back to I'm not in edit mode because there's no pencil just here, which I've already done. So I'm going to go back to edit mode and there are the pencils. Then you'll see a pencil here. Oh, what's that? Well, I think LinkedIn actually just changed their background. I call it wallpaper. It used to be like a blue sky with different their connecting points. Now I think they've done a gray blue thing. It's not really a picture, it's just some graphic. You want to change that. You want to make it your own. I tend to change mine every few months, 6 months or so, depending on what's in my garden. So you can go to your own photos and find something that you really like, or you can go to bigstockphoto.com, and find an image you like, upload it. I think you'll have to pay a few dollars for the copyright of these images, but make it yours. And don't have anything, I say typically no kids or dogs. This is about you. So pick something that you like that reminds you of you. There are really only a handful of professions that lend themselves to a relevant photo. Example, I worked with a chemist last year. What did he want for his photo? Beakers. Okay, great. We found a great photograph of beakers on bigstock.com, uploaded it, he was happy. So again, you want your headshot, you want a background wallpaper that you like, and you want a professional URL that you've customized. And then you're good to go. You've got really the beginning of a good profile. Okay, the next really important piece, it actually, next to your photo, is probably the most important piece of LinkedIn. your profile. And that is this part right here. Whoops, just this part right here, which is what we call your headline. I'd say 95% of people have their most recent job title and where they work. So, marketing manager at ABC company. Well, depending on what your title is, that might not help you at all. Marketing manager, if you want to continue in that role, it's very likely that if a hiring manager or the head of an organization is looking for a marketing person, they're going to put it in this search bar right here. It's very likely that they will put in marketing manager. So that's going to possibly pull up your profile. But it's a little risky because maybe they'll also put in marketing manager, social media, branding, all words associated with marketing. And so my recommendation is don't waste the real estate. I think you have 125 characters allowed for this headline. Put a title if you think it's going to pull on a search. If your title is kind of zany, and some titles are these days, don't put that. But put areas that you know about, areas of expertise. You can see on mine, so I'm a business owner, I didn't put that. People are going to search for someone like me under these terms. So you want to think about, in a way, kind of get in the head of the person who might be searching for you. Think about you. If I'm looking for me, what am I going to put in the search bar? And that ends up being your headline. You might say, well, I want people to know what my most recent experience was. Yes, and they will. When you scroll down to experience, there it will be with your title. So, headline, really important. How do you get to that? Because there's no pencil there. Way you get to it is here. You click on, what's happening? There, pencil. And here's the place where you put in your headline. And the current position will actually automatically propagate from your experience section. If you haven't done your experience section yet, you can fill it in. And they'll want to know where you live. That's fine. Portland, Maine, metropolitan. That's pulled by the zip code, by the way. Your industry area. And this one. This gives you different, if you have a website, go ahead and put it in, your address, your phone, and then you click apply. Okay, those are changes, those are items that you put in first. It begins to build your site. Most people don't even bother with this section. That's a mistake. It's called About. You click on it, and I say 3 short paragraphs. This is an opportunity for you to talk to people about why you do what you do, why it's important to you, why you're passionate about it. And so I say, make it first person, use I, and tell a bit of a story. So here I am, I have extensive outplacement experience, I'm best guiding professionals who. So it's, it's as though I'm talking to the reader. It's not a cut and paste from my resume. And I don't think yours should be. So the other thing that I recommend is putting a list of key competencies. Again, you're thinking about, in doing that, you're thinking about keyword searches. What words are likely to be put in a search? And it's okay if you repeat them. If you have certain words in your headline, you can repeat them in this about section. Last but not least, say you can reach me at. I should probably have skipped a line here. Please contact me. I put my phone number because it's my business phone. I would not put my cell phone. So I don't recommend to most people to put a phone number there. Just put your email and then you save it. Refreshing the page. Okay, so remember I said if you're in the artistic mode or you're a writer, there are a lot of things that you can upload to LinkedIn. That is in this section called Featured. And you can upload any number of things, and it will tell you when you click on it what you can. I realize the time is moving on. Okay, this is what you're after, all-star status. When you begin, you're going to be, there's a continuum, and they'll give you a little a graph, and it will say you're here, and you click on here, and it will tell you what you do to get to all-star. Now, all-star is nice, just not just because there's a star there and you feel all pumped up. No, it's because LinkedIn wants you to have a complete profile. And so they're going to reward you for that, which means all-star status will help you come up in searches. You know, there are 600 million members of LinkedIn worldwide. Anybody could come up in a search. You want your profile to come up. So it will first filter by location, that helps you. But then you want yours to come up on the first page. So all of these tips can help you do that. Okay, experience. One important thing about that. Those of us over 50, we have a lot of experience. You do not want to put all of your experience. So technically, I should not have put Bowdoin down, because it was quite a while ago. But Bowdoin's well known. I'm proud of that experience, so I put it in. I didn't put my other two positions. So don't go way back. We tend to say 15 years, maybe 20, because what are you doing with that? You're keeping them guessing about your exact age, because age discrimination is alive and well everywhere. What can you do about that? I'm always asked that question. Is my age going to hinder me? Well, it could, but what you can do is put your best foot forward. And don't advertise your age. And certainly do not put your year of graduation, whether it's on your resume or your LinkedIn. Don't put the year you graduated. You might say, well, how do I not put that? You click on well, let's say I had a year there. Let's say I had 2009. The way you take that out, you click on this, you hover on the word year, and it takes it out. Save it, no year. Oops. Okay. The rest I don't really need to talk about. Volunteer experience, if you have had volunteer, don't list all the volunteer experiences in your lifetime. Just pick really the most recent. And you'll notice that all of these items have what I will call, well, not what I will call, have logos. Whenever there is a company on LinkedIn, they have their own page, they will have a logo. Some companies are not on LinkedIn. And so even though they have a logo for their company, they will not come up with a logo on LinkedIn. So whenever possible, when you go in, when you start writing your school, you'll see a drop down. Pick the one that corresponds to your school and save it. I like the logos. If you don't have a logo, it has a little gray and blue square. It doesn't look so great. Okay, so jobs. You can begin to set up job alerts. Just follow directions. Oh, I'm not looking for a job, so I want this off. There you go. LinkedIn will give you all kinds of suggestions unless you start to filter those suggestions, and that's how you do that through the job. My network. So I don't want to overwhelm people who do not have a LinkedIn profile, but honestly, you need to try to get up to 250 connections. 500 is the best because LinkedIn incentivizes you for more connections. In other words, you'll come up more frequently in searches. And it's pretty easy to do. There are a lot of people who will connect with you. You just search for them if they're there. So I will put in David Lee, my colleague. Whoops. There he is. I'm already connected to him, but if I wasn't, I would click here, I would connect, and he would accept, of course, and we'd be on LinkedIn. Okay. I'm thinking there would be questions about LinkedIn, but I guess not. Maybe I've covered them all.
There are a couple questions here in the chat.
Good.
For you.
Let's go for it.
Jay Frey would like to know, is it true that you have to have more than 500 connections?
No, I mean, I think I have 1,600, 1,700. As I mentioned earlier, LinkedIn incentivizes members to have a lot of connections. Over 500, I don't think that it's worth anything to try to go over 500. But 250, 500. So for a quick example, I was working with an engineer a few months ago. He redid his profile. It looked fabulous. And I said, well, let's search for you. So we put in, let's say safety engineer and a few of his skills that were in his headline. He didn't come up on the first, second, or third page. I was not happy. So I said, well, we're going to crack this code. Let's find out why. Because LinkedIn's not going to tell you. You'll be on first page if you do these three things. You have to find out from experts, I guess, like me. So we went into the first page to try to find out what those first page listings, what they had that this person didn't have. And the only thing we could come up with was everyone had over 300 connections and he had about 75. So I think it really is true that LinkedIn incentivizes you in terms of placement if you have more connections. Other question?
Yes, Deirdre is saying, thank you for this LinkedIn information. She knows it's important, but Deirdre finds it invasive and doesn't like to put everything out there.
Yes. Oh,
and so would like to know, I think what Deirdre's asking is what's kind of the minimal amount of information?
Yeah. Okay. This is great, Deirdre. I'm so glad. You know, I've talked to people who I'm not on, they say, I'm not on social media. I'm not on Facebook. I don't want to be on social media. Okay. Well, I'm not active on Facebook either. LinkedIn, that's about my profession. You don't say anything. Well, I mean, I suppose where you've worked is personal, but you're not giving your birthday or anything, who you're married to, if you're married, nothing. It's about your professional expertise. And a lot of people put their resumes online. I do not recommend that unless you're applying for an actual job. I don't recommend posting resumes online because you lose control of it. But LinkedIn is, I mean, it is of course your choice. It's not my recommendation to put the minimal amount. I say put what you need to do to present your professional brand accurately and in a compelling way. So I actually haven't heard of people, you know, having weird things happen on LinkedIn. I just haven't. And I've been on for a long time and nothing has happened for me. So I find it a pretty safe, a very safe channel. Anything else?
Yes. Donna is wondering how to make connections, especially if someone hasn't worked in a while.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you haven't worked in a while, but you know a lot of people. Everyone does. And so you start by thinking about people you know. It could be former colleagues. It could be your next door neighbor. It could be your cousin or your partner. It doesn't really matter. You put their name in the search bar and you see, are they on LinkedIn? And if they are, you ask to connect with them. And when they respond, it will show up with a little red number under my network right here. And you click on it. And that might also be, so I looked at my LinkedIn this morning and I had a couple of invitations and I ignored one and I accepted another and they appeared right here. It is your choice who you connect with. You can ignore an invitation, you know, from a salesperson or a student in China. I don't know how they found my name, but anyway, it doesn't matter. You can ignore them, and then people want to know, oh, will they get a notice saying Barbara? No, nothing like that. It won't go anywhere. So that's how you start to build your network. You put names in the search bar, you send out a request, send out your own little message, not the default one that says, I don't even know what it says, but just say, hi, Jenny, haven't seen you in a while. I'm updating my LinkedIn profile. Can we connect? Simple as that. Any more questions?
I'm just making sure that nobody else left one in the chat here. If you've just joined us, this is Barbara Babkirk of Heart at Work Associates, and she's been showing us how to optimize our LinkedIn profiles. You can ask a question in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question live. And if you would like a recording of this session or some more information, send us an email, marketing@pressherald.com. We will get that to you.
Okay, I want to wrap up. And in doing that, I want to tell you something that's really, really important. And that is, okay, you have your act together. You have a great resume, cover letters written for the position you're applying to. You have your LinkedIn all set, because I want to say guaranteed, but I suppose I don't know. In most cases, the company that you're applying to is going to go to LinkedIn. 98% of people hiring go to LinkedIn first. Now you know it's such a big deal for a career counselor in my company, because people are going to look you up and you want to be prepared. So I say do all that first before you do the last but not least thing in the 3 essential items. You want to be strategic in your conversations. We've all heard of networking. Oh my gosh, everyone talks about networking. We try not to use that word in our company because it means so many different things to different people. To me, it means, well, it used to mean before COVID, wine and cheese at the chamber. You mingle, you talk to people. Really not a lot of things happen. A strategic conversation, however, is a different type of networking. It is one where you know what you're doing, you have an agenda, you know what the outcome is. And the outcome can't be, I'm going to walk away with this meeting with a job. You're going to just get disappointed a lot. But if you say, I'm going to walk away from this meeting with more information about the field that I'm exploring or the company that I'm exploring, you're going to do that if you ask the right people. Excuse me. So strategic conversations are those that you initiate, you request of a person that you know, maybe have worked with, or you want to work at ABC company and your neighbor works there. You don't really know anyone but your neighbor, and you're interested in the field of human resources. Your neighbor isn't in that, she's an accountant. So you say, Helen, I would like to talk to the head of HR at your company about the field that she's in because I'm thinking of making a career change. Would you make an introduction? Great. Your neighbor's glad to do that. She introduces you to the head of HR. You take it from there. You write a note. Could we have a Zoom meeting? I'd like to interview you about the work you do at ABC Company because I'm thinking of applying my skills to HR. And then you have a conversation with her about the skills that you're hoping will apply. And you're also asking her about her work, not questions that you can find on LinkedIn by looking at her profile, like where else have you worked, but questions that, go a little bit deeper. That's the beauty of LinkedIn because you can get so much info about a person's career path by going there. So you don't have to waste your time in these strategic conversations. So chances are this person, so if you find out, oh, I like what she's saying, and she's saying, I can actually apply my skills in HR. So then I would say, oh, this has been so helpful. Who else should I talk to? And then she says, my brother-in-law is in HR over at such and such. Great, I'd love to talk to him. Would you make an email introduction? And I'll take it from there. And then within 2 days, because people will forget things. Within 2 days, you make that outreach to the brother-in-law. You go through the same process. And in the subject line, because if people don't know you, they might just automatically delete your email. In the subject line, referred by your sister-in-law, Helen. I got the names right. Anyway, so that's in the subject line. And then you do the same thing. You're requesting a Zoom meeting. Those work really well. So I highly recommend them. It's how people get leads. 80% of jobs are not advertised. If you think about your career path, I spoke with someone yesterday, 30 years in a particular field, had not applied for a job once. And I think he'd had 5 jobs, 5 different positions, not once. So this was all new to him. So he was laid off. It's like, oh my gosh, I've never done this. So really important to put in this strategic conversation as part of the process. Last but not least, you go through all that, you hear for job lead, you have a great resume, LinkedIn, all of that, you apply and you have an interview. Of course, you can articulate your skills because that's one of the first things you focused on. You get an offer. Yay. And you say, wow, thank you. And that's that. Not so fast. 70% of all employers expect applicants to negotiate the offer. 40% do. Fewer than 40% are women. So if it's a fair offer, and I had someone not long ago get an offer, it was over what she thought she'd get. She did her research. She found out what this position paid in the marketplace. She had it in her mind, what she wanted. She knew the skills that she brought to the position. She was all set with a figure. And they came up, I think, $5,000 more. She did not need to negotiate. She said, thank you so much. I'm very excited. See you in 5 weeks or whatever. Now, that's not always the case. In fact, it usually is not the case. You realize that the position in the marketplace, you can find that on salary.com, LinkedIn. There are typically places, glassdoor.com. You can find that info. What is the marketplace paying for? I used this position earlier, marketing manager. You find out it's this range and they offered you in the middle of the range, but you have a ton of experience and you can hit the ground running. So you say, I've done my research and I realize that I'm in the middle of the range in terms of compensation, and I would like to request $4,000 in addition to your offer because, and then you lay out why. And you don't say because I need it for the mortgage. You say because I have the qualifications and these experiences. So they may say no. They're likely to come halfway. Something's going to happen. So do negotiate if you've done your due diligence on the position. Okay, I'm going to look at my notes and see if I have, one more thing. Backing up to you've applied for the job and you don't hear anything. The waiting is so hard. Don't wait too long, 10 days. Either pick up the phone and call the HR office or email. Yep, some ads say no calls. Too bad. I mean, you haven't gotten the job. It's not as though they're going to take it away from you. So of course they want to keep, the stampede of calls away. But I would say find out what is the status of my application for the marketing manager position. Okay. Be prepared for that interview. Know your skills. Rehearse with someone you know. Be able to give specific examples of skills. That's where people fall short. David spoke to that at the last webinar. It's really, really critical that you do that. So that's the end of the presentation. I know I've covered a lot of info. You can go to our website, heartatworkassociates.com, and it has a video page. It also has blogs that we've written that include a lot of information that David and I have spoken about today. So I welcome you to go to that page. If you have a question or two, you can contact me through the website. I'll be happy to address your questions. Okay, any final questions before we sign off? Molly?
Barbara, I have a question
Yes,
or a comment. I know I find it difficult also to, ask for connections sometimes, but as you mentioned, the first thing an employer will do if they're interested in at all and will be to go to LinkedIn and look at your profile, but they'll also look at the contacts to see who they know that you might know. So
maybe.
just to kind of get an idea. So I think that's an important piece of why it's good to have a lot of contact
Yes,
connections.
that could be true. I mean, if I was hiring someone, I would not go to that measure. It would take time, and I would be much more interested in, oh, do you mean, Dawn, that they might, unknown to you, they might call a person and say, hey, do you know Dawn? What do you think?
Absolutely, that as well as just saying, I wonder who they know, who they're connected to,
I
what
see.
they're,
They'd be
and
curious.
definitely I would call.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose that is the case. Sure.
Mm.
I haven't ever heard of that coming up. People do ask around, that's for sure. They may very well use LinkedIn as a way to do that. Yeah, interesting. Other question? Someone was raising their hand. Oh, yes, Kathy.
Well, this is probably a whole nother topic that could be going, and I know we're going over, but the idea of working right now during COVID, are there lots of jobs that are like remote? I've been, say, doing Medicare research, and oh my gosh, there are tons of people that work on phones. Can you address?
So
like,
that's a very good question.
I've
Yeah.
worked as a semi-retirement job at Bowdoin College Museum of Art, which happens to be closed now, and I'll go back there. I can't wait. But in the meantime, other employee options.
Yes, it's a very fair question. And of course, March, April, May, nothing much was happening except at Puritan in Pittsfield, Maine, where they were making swabs, right? I mean, it was so dead, but I'm really seeing an uptick. I just spoke with I had an email from a client who just finalized, it took 3 months, sometimes it does, finalized a position at a global company here in Maine. And it's a little unusual to land a job before the end of the year in the fourth quarter. Companies typically want to save money. This is a critical position, and so they lifted not a ban, but that tendency not to hire. But I do believe that even in December, in preparation for first quarter next year, there should be an uptick in jobs, certainly the end of first quarter next year. And there are places that are hiring, and of course, the world market has opened up because of COVID. Companies that were totally against remote employees, well, they found this is working for us. Surprise, surprise. Looking on job boards, yes, you can do that. My two favorite are Indeed and LinkedIn. But it's the word of mouth, it's talking to people that you're going to get traction. That it's always been that way. It continues to be that way. Okay, it's 1 o'clock. Thank you all for participating. I've enjoyed this conversation. I'm glad you had questions. And I know I covered a lot of info, but I feel like some of you were taking notes mentally or literally. So I wish you all the best in your search for either new employment or a new career, or just poking around and finding out what's next in your life. Thank you so much.